Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome back. I'm Sadat Anwar. Today I want to take you back a couple of years to October 2017, which was the infamous Las Vegas shooting in the United States. On October 1st of that year, Stephen Paddock, the gunman, shot and killed 58 innocent people in Las Vegas. He injured another 422 people, and in total from the ensuing mayhem, there were 851 total injuries. Now I want to use this example to just kind of show you how white male non-Muslim shooters are treated differently from Muslim shooters. As soon as this shooting took place, everyone was asking the question, why did he do it? And they immediately started trying to dig out some history of mental illness that Stephen Paddock might have had. So the question emerged, did he have schizophrenia? But the experts dismissed that because they said, well, the symptoms of schizophrenia usually appear at a younger age. And Stephen Paddock was 64 years old. They wondered if he was a psychopath, but there was no such diagnosis of him. His primary care doctor, when he was asked, said that he thought that Stephen Paddock might be bipolar. But again, there was no formal or official diagnosis of the shooter being bipolar. One of his friends or family members even mentioned that he's germophobic, meaning someone who has to constantly clean their hands, is scared of getting germs. And finally, there were even theories that he might have alexithymia, which basically means that he's socially maladjusted, he has trouble expressing his feelings, he has trouble expressing himself. And you have to wonder, what man doesn't have a little bit of alexithymia? Questions relating to this man's worldview, the fact that he was an atheist, that wasn't paid any attention. The fact that he was heavily into drinking, that he was into gambling, these were never really seriously advanced as the reasons or the causes for why he might have become a shooter. So anyways, the man had no history of mental illness. So then what did they do? Then they went and asked, well, is there a history of mental illness in his family perhaps? So they went and started delving into the files of his father, Benjamin Paddock. They found that his father had been a bank robber. He had been obviously a convicted criminal. He was also a prison escapee. He had been on the FBI top 10 most wanted list for 8 years, which is one of the longest times that anyone's been on the most wanted list. But coming back to the issue of mental illness, according to New York Times, psychologists then delved into a 1960 psychiatric evaluation of Benjamin Paddock. Remember, this is the father of Stephen Paddock. So they went back 60 years and they went and they looked into this psychiatric assessment of Benjamin Paddock. And that assessment had basically found that there was no mental defect in Benjamin Paddock. The simple point that I want to make in this video is that if a Muslim went and shot dead innocent people in some kind of random shooting spree, do you think they would ask all of these questions of the Muslim shooter? Do you think they would go the whole list of, did he suffer from schizophrenia? Was he a psychopath? Was he bipolar perhaps? Did he have alexithymia? And then even if they bothered to ask all of these questions and do all of these checks and do all of this research, and they found that that Muslim shooter didn't have any history of mental illness, what are the chances that they would then delve into the files of the family's history and look to see if the father or the mother of this Muslim terrorist perhaps had any issues with mental illness? What are the chances that that would actually happen? And the story doesn't end with that. So when they tried to find some kind of history of mental illness in Stephen Paddock, they didn't find anything. So they went back 60 years and they looked to see if there was some history of mental illness with his father, Benjamin Paddock. They didn't find anything, but they didn't rest at that. Close to a year after the shooting, I remember reading in the news that they were now transporting Stephen Paddock's brain to Stanford University, where they were going to do testing on the brain. So they had top pathologists at Stanford University doing multiple forensic tests on Stephen Paddock's brain to find, was there something wrong with his brain? Was there some kind of chemical imbalance in his brain, perhaps, that might explain why he would have gone out and done this shooting spree? Did he perhaps suffer from a stroke shortly before he went on this shooting spree? And they went through a whole list of things that are difficult to read, like atherosclerosis, which means was there some kind of impaired blood circulation in the brain? Perhaps he wasn't getting enough oxygen. He wasn't thinking clearly when he went and shot these people dead. Did he perhaps have frontotemporal lobar degeneration? And to that they said no, because with that condition you can't really do precise mental planning, and yet he did put a lot of precise planning into this shooting. Did he have corpora amylasia? I don't even know how to say these words. They even checked to see that did he perhaps have a tumor in his brain, because perhaps the tumor in his brain could be putting certain pressure on certain parts of the brain, which would make him go out and do something crazy like this. And the short of it is that they found nothing. They were not able to arrive at any kind of clear conclusion or consensus about any kind of mental illness, stroke, tumor, anything like that he may have been suffering from. But the fact that they went to all of this trouble shows you the unwillingness on the part of mainstream Western media, the unwillingness on the part of mainstream Western society to simply accept that a middle-aged man or an older white man could do something evil simply because he is evil. Now again, I ask you the question, and this question is not just for my Muslim brothers and sisters, this is for non-Muslims as well too. If you're a hater, if you're watching this video simply because you hate Islam and Muslims, I'm asking you this question. Ask yourself this question honestly. If someone like me, God forbid, went out and shot a whole bunch of random people dead, do you think you could count on mainstream Western media outlets to ask all of these questions? Do you think they would go to this much trouble to try to ascertain whether I had mental illnesses, whether I was socially maladjusted, whether there were any psychiatric assessments done of me which may reveal that I had some kind of mental problem? And failing that, do you think they would go to the trouble of then investigating my family history? Would they try to find out if my father or my mother had some kind of history of mental illness? Would they talk to my brother? Would they talk to my siblings? Would they try to see if any of them suffer from mental illnesses? And lastly, failing that, if they were unable to ascertain that I had any kind of mental illness and that my siblings and my parents didn't have any kind of mental illness, do you think, really, honestly, I'm asking you this question, do you think that they would invest the time, the money, the resources to have top pathologists at a university do experiments on my brain tissue, cut up my brain and try to find out that what was it that made this guy wrong? Because there has to be something and we want to try to find it. And yet, even after all these tests, they had to admit that they were not able to find any clear answers. And it's been another year since then. So it's been 2 years since this shooting, and we haven't heard anything very clearly about why Stephen Paddock did this. A simple idea that this guy could simply be evil. This is something that escapes the realm of possibility of most Westerners when they think about it. So this very short video was just an example of how media highlights things differently. This is not to say that there are not bad Muslims out there. This is not to say that there are not Muslims who do bad things. But at the same time, there is a very real media bias. It's not just against Muslims, it's also against people of color as well. And that media bias and the different way that it focuses in on things, or things that it chooses to focus out of, that plays a big part in shaping people's minds. It plays a big part in shaping our thinking process and how we think about different people. I honestly don't believe that if I, God forbid, or someone who looked like me, or someone who had a Muslim name, if they went out and just went on a random killing spree, killing 58 people, I honestly don't think that Western mainstream media would go to these lengths and to this much trouble to try to ascertain and find out if this person had any mental illness or mental problems. It would be enough for them to know that this guy is Muslim, oh, he volunteers at such and such a mosque, oh, he had a Muslim vlog on YouTube where he used to talk about Islam. That's it, case closed. That's all we really need to know. Clearly he was a radicalized Muslim. Clearly he had links to ISIS, and that's why he went out and he did what he did. All of this discussion about mental issues, etc., this would not even come into the discussion in any serious way. What do you think? Am I wrong about this, or am I exaggerating things? Please let me know in the comments what you think. I'm interested in hearing your views. Remember to subscribe, like, and push the notifications bell. Take care.